What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome into the Conference Championship edition of the NFL Weekly. That's right, folks. Only 3 games left on the NFL schedule, 2 of which will be this week. We'll get to those. And of course, when I say we, I mean myself and my friend and co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm just looking forward to this championship weekend and take a break, and then let's go at it again one more time, and then call it a season.
Yeah, it's we're gonna enjoy 2. Hopefully, well, selfishly as an Eagles fan, I hope there's a really intriguing game in Kansas City, and I hope that the Philadelphia-Washington game is an absolute snooze fest because I had way too much stress last week. But more than likely, we're going to see 2 fantastic and intriguing football games. And then, as I always say, it's like you get in line to Space Mountain at Disneyland. Get in line for 2 weeks for a 3-hour event. I know we got to take 2 weeks to get to the Super Bowl, draw it out, but it is a little ridiculous. But we'll deal with that when we get there. Still have plenty to get to this weekend. But before we do get to those 2 games, time to look back, of course, at the weekend that was. And we'll throw one thing out there, Raider Jim. I don't know if you have any thoughts. This did break pretty much after I sent the rundown yesterday. Ben Johnson does get the job in Chicago. I would say Ben Johnson was the second most sought after head coach behind Mike Vrabel. Again, I think most people expected Vrabel to go to New England, so you could make the case that the actual free agent, so there was intrigue where they were going to go, was Ben Johnson, but he is going to Chicago. Raider Jim, any thoughts there?
Yeah, you're right. He was an awful hot commodity. I know he was on the Raider Wire, every 2 hours, I think it was, but they have so many people. Any team looking for a coach, he was on the wire, on the fan base or on the media wire for that team, that city. And, I think it's amusing when the decisions are finally made. It's all those reporters in Chicago that get to say, told you so. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's when it comes right down to it. Now it's back to Pete Carroll is the number 1 guy in Las Vegas that they're looking at. However, that said, Ben Johnson, very, very deserving of a chance, and definitely has his work cut out for him too.
Yeah, I will say I do think, as much as we kind of look and you look at the numbers of Caleb Williams' season, and maybe he didn't meet our expectations, but he didn't have a bad rookie year. And I do think when you are a head coach, especially a new head coach, if you can go somewhere and you can see something that I can build with that guy, I think that's a big thing. Absolutely. And I think we're seeing it in Washington this year. Obviously, Bears fans were kind of roll their eyes and thinking, well, we had a chance at Jaden Daniels. That's a whole nother, alternate reality. If you want to go down there, do that, but don't, I would suggest. But yeah, Ben Johnson in Chicago, I think, is a good hire. Will it lead to success? Look, that's another question. The NFL is such a crazy sport. I look at, and thank goodness he kept his job. I really do think Brian Daboll's a good coach. Kevin Stefanski's a good coach, and those guys won maybe 6 or 7 games between the 2 of them this year. So it's not always indicative, but hopefully he does have success there. And this was somebody who last year was on the top of everyone's list and kind of surprised everyone and said, no, I'm going back to Detroit. So he kind of jumps off the ship now, if you will, as he embarks in Chicago. Best of luck to him. But looking back at the weekend of football that was on the field, we'll go through each one of these games, as we only have 2 games to preview. So to kind of fill out the space, our thoughts on the divisional games individually, chronologically. We're going to, of course, start in Kansas City, where it was the Houston Texans falling to the Kansas City Chiefs yet again. I'm going to pass it over to Raider Jim for his thoughts, but I do want to say just one thing, because obviously I think the main story that the public at least has ran with this game was the refereeing. And I think two things can be true at once. The refereeing was abysmal and obviously favored Kansas City. I also think that if that game is called neutrally, I still think Kansas City wins. So, and if you're a Texan fan and you want to die on that hill, I don't blame you. I probably would too, but I'm not going to fight you up there. And I don't think that you're fighting a good fight up there, but there is an officiating problem when it comes to Kansas City. Absolutely. No doubt. But anyways, Raider Jim, your thoughts on the Kansas City win against Houston?
Yeah, I try to fight all the conspiracy theories, and of course, you're going to say that the Chiefs get the nod on these calls. And I looked past several during the course of the season, but I watched that game real close against the Texans, and my gosh, pick your word, pick blatant, obvious, however you want to phrase it, and at the same time, even though Kansas City got the nod on several calls, that didn't mean Houston couldn't go out there and correct it, compensate for it. But when you only score one touchdown and you miss the extra point on that, well, that's not the referee's fault. That comes down to execution. Hats off to the Kansas City defense. We had said it during the early part of the year, or even throughout the year. Reason they went on a streak, reason they ran so many games up in a row, not so much because of the magic of Patrick Mahomes, which he definitely, still holds the magic wand and makes things happen. But that defense kept them in the game all season long, and they did it again this past weekend. We even joked and kind of threw our jabs at Kelsey. Well, where is he? But my gosh, even they used him. They brought him out of the cocoon and set him free like a butterfly a couple times. And it was good to see him do the way he did. More importantly, I really liked the jacket that Taylor Swift was wearing. I thought it went very well, and I was surprised she didn't wear gear. Okay, enough with the shot into the booth. I'm done. It's not even a novelty anymore. It's just annoying. Please keep her off. She has nothing to do with football. Now she's got Caitlin Clark in the booth with her. Oh my gosh, really? Is this what's going to happen? It kind of reminds me of Fox used to do the All-Star games when they first started doing the All-Star games. And I didn't like the baseball All-Star coverage because it turned into what Fox TV people are going to be in the stands, and we're going to show them, and we're going to talk to them, and we're going to show previews. Let's just focus on what it is. Let's focus on the game. But hats off to Kansas City, because I thought they put together a fantastic game. Oh, Mr. Worthy, that youngster, he is just, even if he doesn't get that far, you don't know what's going to happen when he gets near the football. So I think they've got the right combination, and wow, it's going to be a good game this coming Sunday.
Yeah, it was a issue, obviously, the roughing the passer. And I would say the biggest problem I would have was and it wasn't even called, thank goodness, because that would have probably started a riot. But there was a play where Mahomes was running to his left and he gets to the sideline and he stops at the boundary and essentially forces the Texan to do what you're supposed to do in football, push him out of bounds. And goodness gracious, we got some soccer fans that are doing the Leo meme when they're looking, going, oh, I know that. I've seen that before. It was a flop worthy of LeBron's bests. So those are the problems I have with it. Look, if Patrick Mahomes going to go out there and do those things, he's not going to apologize for calls that he gets. And I'm not expecting him to. No one should. But it's that flopping and that BS that I think you leave that for the average quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes is one of the best. His numbers this year have not been great, so I'm not going to say the best, but again, I think he all goes 1-1 in all of our heads. But that stuff he needs to leave. And the other point, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Look, Travis Kelce, he comes up big in these big moments, and it's one of those things where, yeah, we can look at his numbers, and I mean, he was still the leading receiver on the Chiefs, although that might speak to the lack of other weapons. But anyways, we can look at his numbers and kind of, oh, that's not, that's a drop, blah, blah, blah. But they still went 15-2. They're still the 1 seed. They're still going to their 7th straight championship game. So I think us as sports fans, and look, we're wired this way. We have to build narratives week to week. And this narrative and throughout the season has been, Travis Kelce, he's lost a step, or he's gotten slow, or he's more worried about his podcast or his relationship, whatever. Seems like when the time is right and the chips are down, he's ready to roll. So we shall see, as you kind of said. I think this is kind of the matchup. We all expected Kansas City to be in the conference championship game. It was just a question of who was going to step up and would they be worthy. And I do think that Buffalo is worthy, but we'll get to them momentarily.
Question for you.
Yep.
I don't know if you caught it on the broadcast, and I don't know what your feeling is like. Should the commentators kind of be careful on certain things they say? But when it got down towards the end, and it ended up becoming a 23-14 game, one of the commentators chimed in with, Al Michaels is real happy right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, that's not a good look. You should. And I understand, everybody knows Al Michaels plays the games.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, maybe you should keep that one for behind the scenes.
I would imagine, because I believe that was either because that would have either been Joe Buck or Troy Aikman.
And it was Buck that said it.
It was Buck that said it. So what I would imagine is in that kind of fraternity of, Joe Buck is in that fraternity of those top. I would imagine there's kind of a relationship there that Joe Buck knows that Al Michaels chuckled at that. Al Michaels probably got the biggest chuckle out of that. And obviously I have no idea, but that's what I would assume. And we're getting to a point now that they're almost going to be putting, instead of the record next to the name, they're going to be putting the live odds. We're getting very close to that, which whatever it is, like I said, we passed the Rubicon a long time ago. So, whatever. I don't have kids, so luckily I don't have to worry about that side of things. But it's been normalized. And I think even pre-normalization, there would even be moments of certain announcers going, there's only a small amount of people in the desert who care about that play. And most people knew, but it wasn't right there in your face. And now it's like they go to commercial and here's MGM, the official betting site, betting partner of whatever league or whatever, blah, 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 So it's unfortunate. But at the same time, I do like that it's out in the open now.
Right.
Again, because I don't really have any skin in the game. I don't have kids. And thank goodness I don't have a gambling addiction, so it doesn't feed that part of it. But I could understand, that side of it. But at the same time, as a lawyer, or as a not a lawyer, I could very easily in a court of law just say, well, look, if the NFL doesn't put MGM up there, like that addict is still going to go walk down the street and find a bookie. It's not like you take Las Vegas out of things and people are just going to automatically figure out that, maybe gambling, or I got to do it responsibly. But no, I do like the brevity. It's funny when you started with that, I thought you were going to go in the direction, because I don't know if you were listening to the broadcast, but I think it was the second roughing the passer, unnecessary roughness. Halfway through the call, Troy Aikman just goes, "Oh, brother, oh God," whatever it was, because you could just tell he is, and Troy Aikman doesn't care. Like he is the definition of, if it's a bad football game, I'm going to say this is a bad football game. If that's a bad call, I'm going to say it's a bad call. But I did kind of like that, where it's like, you have a former quarterback and a running quarterback. I know Aikman wasn't this, quarterback that we see now, but he was one of the runners in his time. And for him to kind of be like, this is out of control, I think that's
agreed.
That should be some, flashing lights for, hey, we got to fix this. Don't know what that fix is, but we have to figure out a way to not benefit running quarterbacks and then a late slide and boom, you're more than likely going to get 15 yards. So we shall see. But moving on to definitely the biggest shock of the playoffs so far. The Washington Commanders go on the road for a second week in a row. This time they take down the mighty Detroit Lions, the number 1 seed. And really, if I may say, they kind of dominated Detroit really from start to finish. Raider Jim, I know me and you were kind of texting back and forth and it kind of felt like it was the same thing. Oh my God, Commanders. That was the only thing we were texting back and forth to each other. But Raider Jim, your thoughts on a wild one in Detroit?
Okay, I think now it is beyond. They don't understand they're not supposed to be there. Now they believe they're supposed to be there. And that this coming weekend could make it for a very, very tough game in Philadelphia. But I can't say enough about the Commanders. Both sides of the ball. I get it. They gave up 521 yards, but you know what? They took advantage of the mistakes. Mm-hmm. They capitalized on turnovers. They made turnovers happen. And then the execution on the offensive side. I mean, they were winning the game at the line for the most part, and just all the way around. What a fantastic game they played. Lions were good, but I'm looking here at the recap, and we had they were down by 10 at halftime. Mm-hmm. I mean, for goodness sakes. And then Commanders didn't score at all in the third quarter. So what'd they do? They came out and they put up 14. I mean, my goodness, in the fourth quarter. And by that time, it was too late because they were going into the fourth quarter. Lions are still down by 3. And then, after that, it was history, as we all know by now. But I expected the Lions to win. I'm not that shocked. I wasn't that surprised that the Commanders did win the game. I certainly had them covering the spread, which they did that more than handily. So hats off to these guys. And like I say, that was the one team going into this weekend. I thought, man, if they can pull that off, oof, that's going to be mentally, they're going to be just ready to go. They don't believe that they're the underdogs anytime they step on the field.
Yeah, and a lot of credit has to go to Dan Quinn. He has turned things around
so quickly.
Very quickly. And I think for a lot of us, unfortunately, I mean, for me, Dan Quinn, what I'll remember, at least, his first stop as a head coach is 28-3. That's going to be one. And I think that stuck with him and might have kept him out of head coaching longer than it maybe should have. Washington hit the jackpot. I'll start with Detroit first, just because I'll be honest, obviously, as an Eagles fan, and I know we're all very impressed with Washington, but I do think, and not only for the fact that the Eagles have home field advantage now, but I was hoping Washington was going to pull this one off. I didn't go as far as to fully say Washington was live in this one on the money line last week, but I definitely teased that I had some inklings. Obviously, I didn't actually go down with it, but definitely had +9 or 9.5, whatever it ended up at. And it was really never in doubt. But Detroit side of things, it, as a former Charger fan when they were here in San Diego, it reminded me a lot of the 2008, 2007 Chargers, where incredible season. And the minute the chips are down and everything's to play for, it just all falls apart. And just the scenes in the crowd and the fans. I know Washington Commanders fans have to be happy, but you have to look at that and you can't feel a bit of twinge of sadness for those people, that fan base. That, it's one thing to go through the rough times and be in the rough times. It's another to have a franchise-defining season, and you've got an opportunity to host a championship game.
Right.
And you couldn't even beat a rookie quarterback. And it's sad. It's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, this is the NFL. And as you mentioned, Washington, maybe we're the ones who were wrong about believing they should be here, because you're right. I do think they do deserve to be here. And I will say that the defense, they are going to, if they are going to succeed on Sunday, and I'll get deeper into it, but they're going to need to force turnovers again. And I think that might be a little bit of a tougher issue, but Detroit's going to look back. Dan Campbell is a very, very aggressive coach, and maybe it was Ben Johnson's call, whatever it was, but to throw a reverse pass into double coverage, that and I know Jamison Williams is the one who made the decision, all that stuff, but the coaching has to be hammered into them, to the wide receiver. If you see anyone on the other team around him, you need to run it. I think that was a huge part of the game, and it was honestly a very unforced error. If Jared Goff goes out there and throws an interception, it is what it is. But when you look at the box score and you see Jamison Williams with an interception, you have to just go, what are we doing? And again, I wonder if we do see a little bit of maybe a pullback on the aggression or the gimmicks that we see going forward for Detroit. But I think they're fine overall as a franchise. I think you can very easily point to the injuries on defense. They really did finally catch up to him. I mentioned it last week. Eventually, the lack of guys, and then ironically, I think we saw it where maybe the biggest play of the game was 12 men on the field. And I think that does come down to a lot of new faces that just are confused at the call going out and things like that. Very, very tough for Detroit, but for Washington, I mean, you don't want to talk about a tortured franchise. Washington gets out from underneath Dan Snyder and the stink of that ownership group, and immediately is in an NFC championship game. And I also do want to shout out the Commanders, because with the Commanders' appearance in the NFC championship game, the Dallas Cowboys are now the team that has not been to the NFC championship in the longest amount of time. I believe it was 95. So yeah, just want to shout out my Cowboy fans. I'm sure every time I listen or I talk, though, they just fast forward. But anyways, yeah, so great job there for the Commanders to kind of put a little extra misery onto the Cowboys bonfire as well. So incredible performance from Washington. We'll see if they can bring it into the championship game. On to the Sunday festivities and the game that gave me more heartburn than my doctor would like to know, but Philadelphia Eagles 28, the Los Angeles Rams 22. I'm just going to start with the only thing, or the main thing that matters. If you're going to talk about this game, the first name that you need to mention is Saquon Barkley. This man has been the offseason acquisition of the history of the league in my mind. He has turned this run game into a dynastic situation and really does cover up some of the other misgivings on the offense. Now, on the defensive side, Jalen Carter has officially arrived. We've been talking about him. He dropped to the Eagles because of, some of the drama that happened in college, and he's been a model citizen, or at least, from everything I've seen going forward. And I'm telling you, this guy's career trajectory level is on pace with someone like Aaron Donald. He is that much of a difference maker. He had the huge forced fumble coming out of the half, and he had the huge third down sack that really did put the Rams back on their heels when they were driving to take the lead late in that game. Incredible. Look, Jalen Hurts, he wasn't great, but look at the stat line of Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. And don't put their name over the top of them. You don't know the difference, all right? He's playing in a snowstorm. I cannot believe the way he gets treated versus some of these other quarterbacks. And then we're also looking at an offense. We're not the Detroit Lions. We're not the Buffalo Bills. We're not going to throw the ball 65% of the time. We're going to run the ball 65% of the time. Did anyone talk about Jalen Hurts' great run to start that game? No. We all want to focus on the negative with Jalen Hurts. He's not the best quarterback in the league. But again, just because he's not the best doesn't mean he's ass. And that's where we are as a sports society, where there's this top five and then worthless. There is no middle ground. And it's starting to get ridiculous. Keeping things, obviously, the O-line for me wasn't great protecting Jalen Hurts. But I do think you got to give a lot of credit to that Rams defensive front. I didn't think they were going to be able to cause as much havoc as they did against Minnesota, and they damn near did. So hats off to Minnesota, or to the Rams defense there. Obviously, the weather affected things, and I talked about last week where I wanted it to be a mud, just the most disgusting, dirty game ever, and I got pretty much all of that. Pretty much past the first quarter, it was a winter wonderland. And finally, just want to tie a bow on it. I got to tip my hat to the Rams. They bullied the Eagles for large portions of the game, and I did not think that was possible. If you would have told me, hey, you know what, Matthew Stafford's going to go out there and tear you all up, and you're going to lose 31-28. All right, but there's no way you were going to tell me, yeah, they actually bullied the Eagles for the second and third quarter of that game. And that's what happened. The Eagles were still able to be resilient and get the job done. But again, huge shout out to the Rams, Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua. Even though Nacua did not have a great game, that's a tough one in those environment though. Cooper Kupp, all of those guys. That's a very good young team that I think is going to be something to keep an eye on. Now, Stafford might need to be, looked at here in the next 2 or 3 years, might need to replace that with his age, but everything else, plenty of youth, and obviously at the coaching side of things. Raider Jim, your thoughts on the Eagles surviving at home against the Rams?
Yeah, I think I spent most of the game, I don't know how many times the person I'm watching the game with heard me go, oh, Brandon. Oh, Brandon. Oh, poor Brandon. Oh, Brandon's mad. And they're like, what? Never mind. You don't need to know. But what a game. Now, you said one thing. You said you weren't real pleased with the way the offensive line protected Jalen Hurts. But I will tell you, the one thing I did like, and again, first and foremost, there's only one name to mention, Saquon Barkley. But what I really like watching is not just the way he can make things happen, but when they go overhead and they show the blocking schemes, I always like to see who did the job, where did the hole open up, or he had the presence of mind to see it and explode through it. But the open field that was created because of the blocking schemes and because of the actual way that that play is drawn out, and everybody did their job, everybody executed, and to have those big avoids on the left side of the field, and it's snowing or it had snowed, and he's running like he's warming up for a track meet. I mean, it was fantastic to watch. I really did see that. The other thing you hit on, and I absolutely agree, if you would have said to me before the game, over under, Stafford's going to go 300, that's an under. Absolutely an under, let alone 305, 310, 324. That's a lot of yardage. But again, kudos to the defense of the Eagles, because Nacua had, he had some tough looks out there and he couldn't stretch enough, or the ball, did the flailing duck thing. Cooper Kupp, 60 yards.
Yeah.
If they could have pulled him in to get him to 97 yards or over 100 yards, or even get Nacua a couple more complete touches that got him over 100 yards, might have been even more close and more dangerous for the Eagles going into it, or going into the end. But what a fantastic game all the way around. I thought it was very, very good. Kind of a nail biter there at the end, but the right team won, as we're sitting on this podcast and talking about it. You're absolutely right. The Rams are going to be a force to be reckoned with. Last year, they did not lay down and die.
Mm-mm.
Earlier in the season, we said, oh man, this is it. They're done. Nope. I mean, I was definitely wrong on that one, and I'm glad I was, because it was something to watch them put together those 5 wins in a row, I think it was, and then make it this far into the playoffs. So congratulations to them. I really think the Eagles have to do more than they're doing in the past game. Definitely. Because somehow that Washington defense, they did give up 520 yards, but they did pretty good on a couple offensive plays, or a couple offensive possessions that the Lions had. They were getting behind the line and stopping people, which you're not going to hit Saquon Barkley all the time. But even the Rams got behind the line or stopped Barkley, right at the line of scrimmage or a yard back, which really surprised me. So we'll see how it balances out, but I think there has to be more passing game out of the Eagles. for them to have a little more easy road to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I've been hoping all season, because it's been a bit of an issue all season, the passing side of it. I've been the route combinations, the route trees, whatever it's very, very, it's all short to intermediate or goes. Very few anything in the middle of the field. If they are going to work the kind of 10 to 15 yard area, it's going to be on the sideline. And that is a big reason why Jalen Hurts hasn't turned the ball over. And obviously, I think that's a reason why they're not throwing it over the middle. But that's been my biggest issue. If you watch the Eagles, it's either Jalen Hurts throwing a 3-yard screen and you just hold your breath that you don't have an illegal man downfield because every play is an RPO, or you're dropping back and going 65 yards down the field looking for A.J. Brown. That's, I think, the biggest issue. And, I mean, they've survived that way. But you're right. It's going to be difficult. And, spoiler alert on the weather, I checked it out. It's going to be pretty dark. I mean, it's going to be barbecue weather compared to what it was last week. It's going to be like 40 degrees and cloudy. So no snow, no anything like that. So it's going to be something to keep an eye on. Not going to be able to kind of deal with, wide receivers dropping balls, or at least because of the weather, at least. So it's going to be interesting. We'll get to that momentarily. But the final matchup we're going to get to was kind of the main event. And it was a fantastic football game. Did live up to the hype. Buffalo holds off Baltimore for the right to face the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, a tough loss for Lamar Jackson and Baltimore. Raider Jim, your thoughts? Buffalo continues to keep moving forward and continues to kind of be the kryptonite for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, I got to start with this, if I may. It's a game, people. I would love to see the Raiders have a 500 season, let alone, playoffs aside, or this far into the playoff, rounds. Baltimore played a heck of a season. Baltimore took care of business when they had to, but somebody has to win, somebody has to lose. And I get it. Sometimes you lose in the most ridiculous ways, or you got to be kidding me ways. For any player on any side to receive death threats because they dropped a stupid football is absolutely ridiculous. And to find out that Mark Andrews was receiving death threats because he did something that probably nobody that criticized him would have been able to execute. So hats off to him for all his effort throughout the season. He battled his own, even Jackson said, this guy's done nothing but be out there for us all year long. So, it's one of those things. And not only that, I didn't hear Lamar getting any death threats, and he had 2 turnovers in the first half alone. And again, there's no room for it. You can't do that. You can be disappointed. Everybody's going to say, I could have done that. Yeah, okay, sure you could have. But that's why you're sitting on your sofa saying it and 40 pounds overweight. I got you. But what about the game in and of itself? Boy, Baltimore, I don't know. Buffalo just they did enough to hold on, but Baltimore was their own worst enemy. From what I can recall, they were their own worst enemy. Even when their defense held, they would make mistakes. But boy, when it came down to the end, it was a nail biter. It was, and then even I'm usually the guy that says, gave them too much time. They're going to be able to go down. They're going to be able to execute. And when Baltimore got the ball, I said, it ain't going to matter. They're not going to get down there that quick. I think they only had 1 timeout left or something. All of a sudden, there they are, lurking around the end zone. And then they get into the end zone. I'm like, this is really going to go. This is going to be it. And then that poor guy, when he dropped the ball, I mean, what do you say? I know you're going to cheer if you're a Bills fan, of course. But wow, as a football fan and watching anybody go through that kind of trial, tribulation, and he game over. What do? How do you walk into that locker room afterwards? What's that like? How do you get back on that plane? Nothing the teammates can come up and say or do is going to take that image out of his head. So hopefully he doesn't have PTSD for too long, but I'm sure he will have. But again, he's been faced with it his whole life. He's diabetic, has been his whole life, and he's persevered and played through that, and it's never stopped him from being the Pro Bowl guy he is, the all-star that he is, and he'll be back. He's resilient. Baltimore will be back. They're resilient, but they did make too many turnovers, too many mistakes. And Josh Allen, I mean, what do you say about him? I saw him make some passes. It's just like, that's just nuts in that kind of weather.
Yeah, I agree. Getting out in front of it, the hate, the death threats. I mean, there's nothing that can be done on a football field. I mean, for the most part, that should ever condone anyone getting death threats. I think there was a certain hashtag trending on Twitter Sunday night that was just disgusting. It's really sad, and unfortunately, it's the dark side of sports. We talk about it a lot. It's sports fandom in its entirety is mainly toxicity. Unfortunately, only one team's fans can be on the top of the mountain. So there's a lot of people that are in the peaks that are just trying to, throw dirt in these little rock piles. And for the most part, it's all in good fun, right? We could sit here, Caleb Williams, you should have taken Jaden Daniels, blah, blah, blah. But again, this is where it does cross that line. Now, in terms of the game, look, I don't think it's fair to look at one game in a season and Lamar Jackson, there were a lot of questions about him coming into it. And unfortunately, it was very similar to like the old show Lost. Every new episode, you were hoping questions were answered, but instead you got 6 more questions and nothing got answered. I feel like that's what happens every time I watch Lamar Jackson, because there are moments where I watch that man run and then throw, and I go, that is the greatest quarterback I've ever seen. And then there are moments where he's getting tackled and he just throws the ball inexplicably onto the ground. Again, I'm not hating, and I would never want to be in that situation. He's an incredible athlete, but sometimes it just seems like situations arise and he doesn't handle them too well, way too many ill-advised decisions. And you kind of hit the nail on the head. Buffalo, it was just steady ship, just point A to point B. It doesn't have to be flashy. It doesn't have to be crazy. Let's get there. Let's get the job done. And obviously, look, there are a lot of people on, Mark Andrews, and obviously, again, everything that's appropriate, you can be upset that Mark Andrews dropped the ball. I get it. Okay, fine. But I think another question you have to ask is, on a 2-point conversion, how are we not giving the ball to Derrick Henry? I don't know. I've never been an NFL coach. I've never been in an NFL locker room, but literally, if you put a poll, if you need 2 yards, who's the person who you want? Derrick Henry might be number 1, and he's on that team. I don't get it. Again, hindsight's 20/20, because you could point and go, well, the play worked. All you had to do was catch it. I get it. But it's been very interesting to see a lot of times 2-point conversions are needed and we're throwing the ball. It blows my mind. I think Derrick Henry should have gotten the ball there. But I think for me, the biggest storyline here was Baltimore shooting themselves in the foot. I don't think Buffalo went out there and, grabbed the game by the throat and took it from them. It was just like, okay, it was like playing golf. They're going to play bogey-free golf. They're not going to hit any birdies, but everything's a par. Well, unfortunately, Baltimore had 4 bogeys out there, and Buffalo took advantage. It's really all you can say on Buffalo's side. Again, they did a good job keeping Lamar in check for the most part, but the mistakes have got to get cleaned up for Lamar in order for him to get to the next level of his career, even if that's just getting to a Super Bowl. But tough one for Baltimore. And then for Buffalo, nobody circles the wagon like the Bills. Here we go again, folks. But here we go again. So moving on to the game previews. Of course, this Sunday, it is Championship Sunday. It is my favorite Sunday of the year. The Washington Commanders, they are heading to my Philadelphia Eagles. The spread sits at Philadelphia's 6-point favorites. The over-under is 48. Obviously, this is a game that, I mean, it's a must-win, obviously, but Washington is playing with, I don't like the nothing to lose moniker because they have a football game to lose, but they're playing with house money. This is a team that knows, boom, if we go out and we lose on Sunday, no one's getting fired. We're still champions of the city. The future is still bright. Now, on the flip side, unfortunately, if Philadelphia comes out and they do not get the job done, I don't know if anyone's getting fired, but the pitchforks, the torches are getting picked up, and there will be plenty of Eagles fans who will be calling for Nick Sirianni's job. And who knows, maybe the Jalen Hurts discord will sneak into Eagles Nation, but I doubt that. I genuinely think, and we are recording this on Tuesday, I should say, very early in the week. I am very confident. And generally, by the time Sunday rolls around, that confidence will be down to like 2. But right now, I'm at like a 70. I really, really do think the Eagles are going to come out, and I think they're going to take control. And I think a lot of it is because the Washington defense is not great. I would venture to say this is probably the worst defense they've faced in the postseason thus far. And then the weather seems like we're going to get an opportunity to see Jalen kind of let it loose a bit. And hopefully, obviously, Saquon Barkley puts together another fantastic game. I have really no doubt about that. I'm going to buy 0.5 point. Give me Philly minus 5.5. I am certainly not, well, I'm not betting that. I am 100% doing the emotional hedge here. So I will take the Commanders money line, but that is only because I need to be happy one way or another Sunday night. But I do think Philadelphia gets the job done, and I think they do it rather comfortably. I don't know, maybe that's just my hubris. But you go back in the second game against Washington between the Eagles, I really do think if Jalen Hurts stays healthy and the defense just doesn't just, for lack of a better word, poop their pants for the last 5 minutes of that game, the Eagles win that game. I do kind of think it's ironic. I think it's a good thing the Eagles lost that one, because if the Eagles are coming in against Washington with, they won both their games, everyone knows what everyone says at that point, right? It's almost impossible to beat a really good team 3 times. So we don't have to hear that all week. I think Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, that offensive line, they get things back under control. I think A.J. Brown puts the book down, gets back to work. Devonta Smith gets the job done. And Dallas Goedert has been the best weapon the Eagles have had offensively, not named Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts as well. I am going to take the under here. I think 48 is a little too much. But again, I think the Eagles are going to do what I expect them to do. They are going to be like a boa constrictor. They're just going to grab a hold. And I see this game, Eagles 24, Commanders 13. I think this is a ground and pound. I think this is a suffocating type game. It's probably not going to be an amazing, highlight reel filled game, but the Eagles, that's kind of how they need to win. They need to win ugly. I'd like for them to win non-stress wise, but I have a feeling there'll be plenty of stress here. Raider Jim, your thoughts? Philadelphia favorites at home against the Cinderella Commanders.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, you just don't look, you don't analyze. And if you just look, you say, well, yeah, that's about right. Philadelphia -6, that makes a lot of sense. However, again, I got to go back to the passing game of the Eagles, and Washington gave up 520 yards or something like that, this past weekend. And they won the game, and they won the game handily. So it's going to be how well can Philadelphia take care of the football, because any mistakes, that's where the Commanders are going to feast. they will take advantage of that. They will exploit people with that. And then you change the other team's game plan. All of a sudden, you're not on the offense anymore. You're getting put up against the ropes, and you got to fight your way out of the corner to stay in the fight and get back to the middle of the ring. So if there's anything that looks like a couple of bad turnovers, that's not going to bode well for Philadelphia, for the Eagles. And the other thing is, Philadelphia, they gave up 324 yards to the Rams in the passing game. Washington's going to come out and they're going to be ready to give it a shot and see what they can do on the passing side of the ball. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I do think Philadelphia will probably come away with the win, more than likely. I don't see that being any different. But on the gambling side of things, I'm going to go half point the other way. Give me Washington plus 6.5. And as far as the over-under, 76 points between the two teams, Washington and Detroit, last week. However, this is the Eagles. This is not the Detroit Lions. So I tend to go with you on that. I'm going to go ahead and take another half on that, though, under 48.5. But, wow, good weather. And Saquon Barkley, as long as I don't believe there's anything you can do to stop him.
Yeah, it's really, really incredible to watch him. And one final thought, this is kind of tongue-in-cheek, and hopefully he'll get a giggle out of some people out there. But look, Cinderella, that is the Commanders. But everyone knows eventually the clock does strike midnight. Quick Google search will tell you, what shade of green do the Eagles wear? Midnight green. Moving on to Buffalo at Kansas City. The Chiefs going for another Super Bowl, going for their three-peat, or at least another Super Bowl appearance. It is the Chiefs going to be 2-point favorites in this one. The over-under sits at 47.5. Raider Jim, your thoughts? The AFC Championship, Buffalo at Kansas City.
No rain, no snow, but it's going to be 32 degrees or thereabouts at kickoff time. Kansas City at home. They love playing at home, and they love their house. And you know what? If you don't like them playing there, then beat them during the season so that they can't do that. What's going to happen this weekend? I think Buffalo realizes that the old adage, sometimes better lucky than good. Not that they were not good in the game last weekend. My point is, fate was on their side. They got a lucky break. Had that 2-point conversion happened, I'm not sure that we'd be sitting here talking about Buffalo against Kansas City. But that is what happened. So Buffalo's there. Buffalo's got to be a little mentally tired, if nothing else, but they're ready to go, and they're ready to make their statement. They are damn sick and tired of playing second fiddle to the Chiefs. Unfortunately, Patrick Mahomes still holds the baton. He still controls the orchestra. I don't think you're going to see the calls, the referees like we saw this past weekend. There might be one or two here or there, but I don't think that's going to be it. And the key to the game is not going to be just Patrick Mahomes, not Kelsey. Go back to what we said at the beginning of the podcast. The defense has got to play at a different level. Defense, to stop that big boy Josh Allen and the rest of the gang, they're going to have to play some ball. The running back for the Bills escapes me.
James Cook.
Wiry little guy. But he has this amazing way. I loved it. Every time he got the ball, he cuts wide, he's cut wide. But his peripheral is such that he knows if he keeps going wide or he sees that to the right and he makes this little juke on the inside and he knows where to find the hole. If they can stop him and the defensive line of the Chiefs is good enough to stop him, this one, like I always say, same old broken record, Raider Jim, this is going to be in the trenches, and my money is going to be on the Kansas City defensive line on this one. So give me I'll take Chiefs money line in this one. And I'm going to go under. I'm going to take a whole point, go under 48.5, because I don't think it's going to be a shootout. I don't think Kansas City has what it takes offensively this year to get into a 50, 60-point shootout with these guys.
Yeah, I agree with you on both of those. I expect this to be a very tight game. Generally, anything 2 points or less, I just go with the money line. I don't want to deal with a weird situation or, anything like that. So, yeah, I'm going Kansas City money line. I just believe that, we can joke about black magic or voodoo power or whatever. And I mean, it's certainly there. I'm not saying it's not happening. I'm just not in that camp. But Kansas City also is very good, and a big reason why they put themselves in those positions where we're like, oh, they got away with it again, is because they're very good. They're very well coached. I mean, obviously, Andy Reid is the top of the top at the profession right now. They're very cohesive, and we talked about it was Mike Vrabel when he got the job in New England. We talked about the Patriot way. And now, I mean, you want to talk about a locker room where, let's just say, and I know this would be crazy, but Shedeur Sanders somehow ends up on the Kansas City Chiefs. You think Shedeur Sanders is going to walk in with his big old ego and not get checked at the door in that locker room? And I think that, again, is the difference between Kansas City and elite locker rooms and some of the others. I think one of the locker room atmospheres and culture is one of the more not talked about or least talked about things in sports. And I think Kansas City's culture and what they've built from the top to the bottom, Andy Reid isn't the one disciplining these guys. It's Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Chris Jones. It's those guys who are saying, look, you're not going to waste Coach Reid's time with this BS. We're going to come to you. And you know what? If you don't fix it, they're just going to cut you. So it's either get on board or get out. And I do respect that. But I tell you, I am so sick and tired of them. I am so sick and tired of every February we're having to figure out, well, who's going to come out of the NFC? Who's going to play the Chiefs? Can they beat them? Trying to figure out, is Taylor Swift going to be? I am over all of it. And I would just this is a lie, but I'm going to say it. I might be cheering for Buffalo more than the Eagles. Okay, I couldn't even say it on a straight face.
Wow.
But I am pulling hard for Buffalo. Yeah, that was ridiculous. But I am pulling very hard for Buffalo. I think everybody in the league, I mean, I even have a Patriot buddy who hates the Bills. He's cheering for the Bills. That's where we are in the NFL. So I hope Buffalo can get the job done. But betting Brandon and fan Brandon, two very different people. Betting Brandon's going to be laying Kansas City money line. Fan Brandon is going to have his Bills cheerleader costume on. And then I agree. I think the defense of Kansas City is going to make things a little more difficult for Buffalo. And Buffalo will probably be able to score points. It's just not going to be at the pace that will warrant a shootout. I think Kansas City wants to turn this into 8 possessions, an 8-possession game. Both teams get, 5, 6, 7, 8 possessions. Shorten the game. I think Buffalo wants to go the opposite way, but unfortunately, I think Kansas City does their tempo does rain out. And then, of course, they do have the home field advantage. So I'm just going to be really excited to watch this one and hope, again, that we get nothing against a lot against the Chiefs, but I'm just tired of them. It's not a cheater thing or this or that, but I think I speak for every NFL fan when I just go, can we see someone else? And it's not like it's the Patriots, the other alternative. It's the Bills who, goodness, you want to talk about a tortured fan base, that might be number 1 on the list. So I hope I'm wrong, but Kansas City money line under 47.5. But it's going to be a very, very fantastic championship weekend. I think for me, I hope it's a memorable championship weekend for all the right reasons. But Raider Jim, your final thoughts for this episode of the NFL Weekly.
Well, partner, hard to believe that we're down here to just 2 more weekends of football to talk about. I guess we could come back first weekend of February and do a recap of the flag football game that's going to take place, just to do it. I mean, if you really want to. But no, seriously, final thoughts. In the last few games we have here, and everybody loves a storyline. We always look for the good storyline. There was the potential for a storyline that would have been kind of interesting to see, but thanks to Dan Snyder, it's not going to happen. And one of the guys who I think really got screwed in all the Dan Snyder BS that he did with that organization, Eric Bieniemy. We would be sitting on a potentially Eric Bieniemy assistant coach and offensive coordinator and going up against his old mentor Andy Reid, and now there's just no chance that's ever going to happen. And hopefully hopefully I wish him well, continued success in the college ranks. But wow, that would have been a good one. But that's the things you look at and it's like, wow, for lack of good management, so many people get screwed around. And that's not just in the NFL, it's in the corporate world, it's in politics, you name it. But this coming weekend, it's going to be some good football. Let's see what those Cinderella kids do from Washington. Like I say, now it's gone from they don't realize they're not supposed to be there to damn right we're supposed to be here. Philadelphia knows that, though, and I think they've got what it takes to take care of business. Kansas City, I hate to tell you, but I have a feeling we're going to be sitting here next week talking about, whether you like it or not, it's that thing. There they are again. So, 7 times in a row to get to this game. Wow, that's quite a statement. Quite a statement. So I'm just really looking forward to the final 2 games in each conference, or to see who's going to go to the Super Bowl, and can't wait to see what we're talking about next week.
And man, it's little bittersweet, you kind of get there and you're gonna have arguably the 4 best teams, and actually maybe not even arguably, we are here and they are the 4 best teams, and they're all going to be on essentially 8-hour window for us to just kind of sit back. It's like the final just like the final send-off for the end of a vacation, or going back to real life. But it's about to be very close to being the end. Enjoy the weekend, be safe, and just to kind of continue what we talked about with the Mark Andrews situation. Obviously, look, sports, I get emotionally invested way more than I should, and I'll be honest with you, when you do take a step back and look, it is kind of crazy that not even players really, we're really kind of just cheering for the clothes they're wearing, but I'm not going to sit here, we can kind of joke about it, but the main point being, it's just a game. The guys that you see out there, while are incredibly talented and athletic, and a lot of them are insanely wealthy, every single one of them are human. Every single one of them got to go home to their family, or they got to go home with their thoughts, and they got to go home and live their life. Just keep that in mind. Again, the furthest I will ever go is calling for the release or the firing of somebody. I think that's as far as you should ever go. And even that's kind of a pretty crazy accusation when you really do take a step back at it, and calling for the firing of a stranger that you don't know. But again, the point is, this is a game, and what happens on that field doesn't really affect us too much. So don't affect them. The death threats, any threats of any kind, violence, anything like that is abhorrent. Could not condemn it more. And really, I think anyone who is found doing that, and I'm not all for spy agencies going in and doing that stuff, but if there was just a list of these were the people and this is what they said, I think a lot of people would change maybe the way they talk and maybe the way they interact on the internet. But as Mike Tyson says, the internet has made it easy for you to talk without getting punched in the face, or something like that.
Right.
But it's very, very important to keep humanity in it. Again, I get very frustrated. Believe me, last year I was leading the charge calling for Nick Sirianni's job. But I know where the line is. I stay on my side, and at the end of the day, it's just a game. Death threats, any of that stuff needs to get out of there. And if I'm being completely honest, if you're one of those people, you should be ashamed of yourself and you need to be better. But with that being said, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the NFL Weekly presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It's time for you all to go wash your hands. Stop hating, everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon. Take care.